Welcome to today's deep dive, where we'll be exploring Mexican muralism, but through a different lens than usual.
Yeah, through the lens of a fascinating artist, Elena Huerta. You know, most people know the big names like Rivera or Siqueiros.
Right, of course.
But Huerta's story adds a whole new dimension to this period.
It really does. It's a story that challenges assumptions and I think asks some tough questions about women's roles in art and how Mexican identity was being represented.
Absolutely. And it makes us think about the purpose of art in public spaces, what it's really trying to do.
Okay, so less about pretty pictures, more about social and artistic context.
Exactly.
So let's start with Elena Huerta. Who was she? Where did she come from? What led her to muralism?
Well, she was born in 1908 in Saltillo, Mexico, daughter of a general and a teacher.
Wow, that's an interesting mix.
It is, right? A real blend of influences, especially in post-revolutionary Mexico. So it's not surprising that her life had this strong sense of social purpose, but also this deep appreciation for creativity.
Makes sense. And she started her art training young, too, right?
Oh yeah, very young. She went to the Saltillo Art Academy, and by 18, she was a certified drawing instructor.
A teacher at 18. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So clearly a lot of talent early on. But how did she end up in the middle of the Mexican muralist movement?
Well, in 1927, she moved to Mexico City, which was buzzing with artistic and political energy at the time.
I bet.
And she really dove into the world of muralism, studying at the Academy of San Carlos till 33.
Prestigious school.
Very. But Huerta wasn't just about technique. She was very engaged with the social and political things happening around her.
Right.
She joined the Mexican Communist Party, the League of Revolutionary Writers and Artists, and she even contributed to the Taller de Grafica Popular.
Which was?
It was a collective of printmakers who were all about using art for social change.
So her art wasn't just about aesthetics. It was making a statement, maybe even trying to change things.
Exactly. And this commitment to social change took her beyond Mexico, too. During World War II, she traveled to the Soviet Union with her daughters.
Wow.
And you know who gave those daughters a nickname? Diego Rivera himself. He called them Las Rositas.
Las Rositas. I love that.
It wasn't just a vacation for her. It reflected her strong belief in leftist ideals and that art could go beyond borders.
Yeah, Las Rositas really humanizes this whole thing, gives you a glimpse into the personal side of this movement.
It does.
So we've got this incredible woman artist, activist, mother world traveler. But let's get to the heart of it. How does she break into muralism, which was really a man's world at the time? And what challenges did she face?
That's the big question. And to answer it, we have to think about the context of muralism in the 20th century, especially in Mexico, was pretty much a man's domain.
Yeah.
Women were usually doing smaller work, decorative arts, things considered appropriate for women.
So even within a movement that was all about social change, there were still these inequalities.
Sadly, yes, often. And Huerta faced even more hurdles. She was raising a family, dealing with health issues, active in politics, and teaching art on top of everything.
Wow.
All that, plus the societal expectations at the time, meant she didn't get her chance to do large-scale murals until later.
It's like she had to fight for the space to even work on these big projects. So how did she finally get that first mural commission?
It took time and persistence.
It's
Let me
right.
tell you, imagine being in your 50s and only then getting that first big mural commission.
That's incredible.
It wasn't handed to her either. She had to go through approvals negotiations. She had to convince mayors, state officials, directors of cultural institutions before she got the go-ahead.
Sounds more like a political campaign than an art project.
It does, doesn't it?
Speaks volumes about her determination.
Yeah.
What was the subject of this first mural?
Her very first was at the Antonio Nero Superior School of Agriculture, done in 1952. But it's the later ones, especially in Saltillo, that really cemented her legacy. The most remarkable is 400 years of Saltillo history.
Okay.
It's a huge panoramic mural covering 450 square meters. It captures the spirit of her hometown while also showing her unique take on social change and progress.
Now, I'm intrigued. What details in that mural show Huerta's vision and how she approached these themes of social change? How does her work fit into the Mexican muralist tradition but also stand out?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. And that's exactly where we'll pick up in part 2. You know, it's interesting how Huerta, focusing on Saltillo in her later murals, kind of reflects a change in Mexican muralism itself.
Yeah, at first it was all about creating this unified national identity, right?
Yeah.
Promoting these grand narratives of Mexican history and culture.
Exactly. Like after the revolution, there was this need to bring everyone together. And art was seen as a way to do that.
Right. We talked about that national homogenization thing.
Yeah.
Using art to unify the country. But you're saying things started to change.
They did. As Mexico grew up both artistically and politically, things got more diverse, more complex. And you see that in Huerta's work, especially 400 years of Saltillo history. It's like she's saying, hey, there's the national story, but there are also these amazing local stories that matter.
So she's zooming in on the details, the nuances that make up the bigger picture,
Mm.
which makes sense when you think about her life. It wasn't homogenous at all. She was a
Mm.
woman, an artist, an activist. She lived that complexity.
Exactly. And by choosing Saltillo, she's also claiming a space for women in a field that often ignored them. It's pretty bold. A woman in her 60s taking on this huge project that would become the largest mural ever made by a woman in Mexican art history.
That's a powerful statement. It's like she's saying, women's stories matter. Our experiences deserve to be seen on a grand scale, and we're not going anywhere.
You got it. It's not just about gender, though. It's about recognizing all the different experiences within Mexico. 400 years of Saltillo history isn't just celebrating the past. It's reflecting the people, their struggles, their victories, their hopes.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Can we get into some specifics? What details in this mural show Huerta's unique view on social change?
Sure. Let's look at her portrayal of labor struggles.
Ah.
For example, she doesn't shy away from the difficulties workers face, but she also shows their resilience, their strength, their unity.
So she's giving a voice to those who are often overlooked or silenced.
Right, the backbone of society who rarely get the recognition they deserve. And then there's her depiction of university autonomy movements, which shows how much she believed in education and critical thinking. It's like she's saying, progress needs informed, engaged citizens. And that starts with access to knowledge and the freedom to question things.
It's almost a visual syllabus for a better future, built on education and activism.
And of course, you can't forget her portrayal of women entering the workforce.
Yeah.
A subtle but strong statement about gender equality and how women's roles were evolving in Mexico. It reminds us that progress isn't just big political movements, it's also those everyday acts of courage and defiance that change our society.
So much meaning packed into these huge canvases. It's clear Huerta wasn't just making pretty pictures. She was using art to engage with complex social and political issues, to start conversations, to challenge how people saw things.
And she did all that while managing a family, being an activist and a teacher. It shows her incredible dedication to her art and her beliefs.
Speaking of teaching, I'm curious about her impact as an educator. You mentioned she was a certified drawing instructor early on. Did she keep teaching?
Oh, yeah. Teaching was always part of her life. She shared her passion with so many students, shaping the next generation of artists and thinkers.
It's amazing how art can educate, enlighten, and change how we see the world. But to understand Huerta's legacy, I think we need to talk about the Mexican muralist movement itself. What were its roots, its goals? How did it shape Mexico's cultural landscape?
Well, the Mexican muralist movement came out of the Mexican Revolution, a time of huge change and upheaval. It was a time when artists, intellectuals, and revolutionaries were all asking, what does it mean to be Mexican in this new independent nation?
So this movement really came out of this need to figure out Mexican identity after the revolution. What were these artists trying to do with these giant public murals?
They saw art as a tool for social change, for education, for bringing the country together. You know, these weren't paintings tucked away in some fancy gallery for the elite to see.
Right.
They were out in the open, on the walls of public buildings, schools, government offices, places where everyday people would see them.
It was art for the people by the people.
Exactly. And the size of those murals was important, too. They were supposed to be grand, impressive works that would make you feel a sense of history and national pride.
What about the content of these murals? What kind of stories were they telling?
Well, a lot of them showed the revolution itself. You know, heroic battle scenes, portraits of leaders, celebrations of indigenous cultures, all meant to create this new feeling of what it meant to be Mexican.
Right.
But they also dealt with tough issues, critiques of colonialism, explorations of social inequality, calls for justice. It was all there in those vibrant paintings.
It sounds like they used art to start a nationwide conversation, to really grapple with Mexico's past, present, and future.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how the movement evolved over time. At first, it was all about creating a unified look, a visual language that would erase regional differences.
But as Mexico grew, so did its art.
Exactly. It's like they realized that real unity wasn't about erasing differences, but celebrating all the different experiences that make up Mexico. And Huerta, with her focus on Saltillo and her commitment to social progress, she was right at the forefront of that change.
This has been an amazing journey, and Elena Huerta's story is so inspiring. She wasn't just talented, she was a pioneer, a visionary, a woman who wouldn't let anything stop her from achieving her dreams.
And her legacy goes way beyond the murals themselves. She reminds us that art history is always changing. There are always new stories to find, new voices to hear.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives, right? We get to uncover Those hidden gems challenge what we thought we knew and learn more about art and the world around us.
So as you go about your day, think about the art you see, not just in museums, but everywhere. Who made it? What's the story behind it? Whose voice is being heard? And whose is being silenced?
Let Elena Huerta's story remind you that there's always more to discover, more to learn, more to question. Keep exploring, keep digging deeper, and keep those deep dives going.